Welcome to this VCU Career Services video. I'm Anna Umbreit, one of the career advisors in the VCU Career Services office. Today's topic is writing a winning resume for on and off-campus jobs. Has this ever happened to you? Have you been browsing through a list of jobs and you saw an opportunity that you were excited about and you went to go to apply to it and discovered that they were requesting that you submit a resume? This can cause a lot of confusion. You might have questions about what is a resume, or is my resume strong enough, or what are they looking for on a resume, or how long should it be? So one of the first things I want to talk about is that there are different kinds of resumes. You may already have a draft of a resume, but it may not be what an employer is looking for when you're looking at applying to a job search. With a high school or a college admissions resume, this is most commonly what we see with a student who has recently joined VCU. Typically, that's going to be a list of your involvement in awards. It's going to be multiple pages. There's minimal or no description of the skills involved, and it's not tailored to the reader. Then you have your job search or professional resume. In this case, it's going to be a summary of your potential for the job you're applying to. It's one page. Descriptions are included to explain and highlight skills and experiences, and it's tailored to a particular industry or type of job. And sometimes you have multiple versions of your resume as a result, because if you're applying to different kinds of jobs, you might have different versions of your resume. So what often people will do is they'll just start by Googling resume templates, and let me tell you, there are a lot of strange and scary examples of resumes available online. So don't do that. Instead, come to the Career Services website. If you hover over advising, it'll give you the option to select resume guides. And then there you can find different examples of resumes. Here's one that I've pulled for us to talk about today. This comes from our general resume guide. This is a first year or sophomore resume, and you can see that overall there's a lot of different information on the page, but it's split up into three specific sections: essentials, experiences that relate to what you're applying to, and extras. If you're not a first year or sophomore student, here's a junior or senior level resume. Again, we have these three sections: essentials, experiences, and extras. But here you can see that they've got some more sections like campus involvement and coursework. And so sometimes the further along you get in your college experience, the more elaborate your resume will become, although it still is only one page. If you look at any of our resume guides, the first page is going to be formatting tips, and these are just 5 key ones that I wanted to highlight for you, but I do encourage you to read through the details that we have included for you on that first page. We do emphasize that your resume should be one page long with very few exceptions, but typically recruiters, if you are working towards your bachelor's degree and you don't have significant work experience, typically recruiters want to just see a one-page resume. One of the easiest ways to make the most of that one page is to go ahead and adjust the default margins that Google Docs or Microsoft Word provide for you. They often are much, much larger than what we'd recommend. So we typically say drop your margins down to as small as 1/2 inch, but you definitely don't want them to be 1 inch or 1 1/4 inches the way they tend to be with a program like Word. Then look at your font type and size. This is not an academic paper, so it does not have to be 12-point font. Don't go too small with it either, though. So think about, usually 10 points or 11-point font is a good size to aim for. And you can use a lot of different font types. What we tend to recommend is sort of general ones to consider would be Calibri, Times New Roman, or Arial, because they're all very easy to read. But if there's a font that you like that is similar in look to those, where it looks professional, it's not too much of a script like you'd see on an invitation, then you can try that font. Consistency is key. So if you are underlining your section headers, make sure all of those headers are underlined. If you are emphasizing the employer name by bolding it, then all of the employer names need to be bolded. If you're italicizing your job titles, all of those need to be italicized, and so on and so forth. But the key thing is when someone starts reading your resume, the way you format it at the top should carry through the entire document because you're showing them how to read the information. It also, if you have inconsistencies in your resume, it can look like it was just an error, i.e. you didn't proofread your resume and you sent it in, so maybe you don't care so much about that job. So we can quickly jump to conclusions about what an inconsistent style within a resume can mean. So let's just avoid that altogether and just proofread it really thoroughly to make sure that your resume is consistent. And then do use emphasis, like I was mentioning, bolding or italics to draw the eye throughout the document. That is going to help somebody read your resume more easily. So the actual step one is going to be research. And you might be thinking, well, you already have to work on a resume. Why do you not have to add research into it too? And what on earth would you even be researching? And don't panic. With researching, what you're really doing is figuring out who is your audience. What are you looking for? Who's hiring for those skills? And then for those people who are hiring, what are their needs? What are they interested in seeing? And they actually give you a variety of clues in the job posting. Why does it matter? Why is it important for you to do research? Well, think about if you're seeing a job posting somewhere, there's so many other people who are seeing it and likely applying to it as well. So this image is a funny way of showing this. But you know, when you're applying for a job, typically there's going to be other applicants, and sometimes there may be dozens or even hundreds of other applicants. So you need to stand out from that batch of resumes. And it's important to stand out by showing the employer that you're a great fit for their opportunity. By doing that, you're going to earn more time and attention from the recruiter or the employer who's reading your resume. You might be surprised to learn that when someone reads through a resume, on average, they're spending 7 to 10 seconds doing so. So imagine how much content you can actually read within those 7 to 10 seconds. When they go through that initial skim of the resume, if there's something there that catches their attention, like if they're reading along and they're thinking, yes, this person does have the skills I'm looking for, has the experiences I was hoping to see, then chances are they're going to give your resume a little bit more attention and give you more of their time as they consider you as a possibility for someone that they might interview. And then you want to prime the employer to say yes. So this is an important distinction. As a candidate, you're thinking, well, of course they're going to say yes to me. But for the employer, when they've got a stack of resumes in front of them, like in this image, they are going to know that they're going to say no to most of those applicants. So that means they're starting to read your resume and every resume that they look at with a mindset of, I'm probably going to say no to this person. And that's just the percentages. So if you think about it, if you apply to a job and 100 other people apply to that job, there is no way they're going to interview all 100 people. They're going to interview a small percentage of those people, maybe a dozen people. That may even be high. So if you think about that, 12% or fewer of those resumes are going to end up getting the opportunity to interview. So what you're trying to do is give the employer a reason to say yes to you and be one of those 12% or fewer applicants that they're going to be talking to. And by gearing your resume towards what they're interested in, they're more likely to say yes to you. And you want to stand out in the right way. So often I'll have clients who ask, should I be putting in design elements? Should I be using color on my resume? Should I make a creative resume? And you can do any of those things as long as it's serving the purpose of that document. So it still is a resume, it's easy to read, it shows your potential for an opportunity. You can certainly do those things, but honestly, the best way to stand out with your resume is organizing it in a way that's meaningful to the person you're sending it to. And the only way you can do that is if you do some research into the employer and what they're interested in, the work that they do, and the kinds of skills that they're looking for. So what do employers want? Well, the National Association of Colleges and Employers identified 8 essential competencies that are required to be career ready. And if you look through this list, none of these are a specific major. In fact, pretty much any major at VCU would help you develop skills in these areas. You probably already have skills in these areas too from some of the other experiences you've had in life thus far. So that's a key piece. And then I mentioned before, there's clues in the job posting. So you can break that job description down, looking for the skills and the experience the employer is requesting. And that's going to give you an idea of what their wish list is. And the more you can address that wish list through your resume and your cover letter, the more likely they are to see that you're a great fit for their opportunity. Now, do remember, this is a wish list. The employer has no idea if someone with everything they're asking for exists and is currently looking for an opportunity and wants to work for them. So they've put it together in the hopes that they can find somebody that sort of meets it. So they're not expecting you to meet every qualification. And that's an important distinction, because sometimes when people are job searching, they'll rule themselves out of a possibility because they're like, I don't meet everything that's in the job posting. And you don't need to do that to yourself. If you meet about half of the qualifications, and especially if you meet the required qualifications, then go ahead and apply for the job. Give them a chance to see your background, see how you position yourself for the opportunity, and see if you end up with an interview and where that goes from there. Okay, so step 1 is research, figuring out what the employer wants. Step 2 then is to show the employer your potential. So the biggest way to show potential is through showing them the experiences you've already had. Now, experience is not just work experience. It can be any of these other kinds of opportunities as well: volunteering, community service, class projects, part-time jobs, research, internships, professional associations, etc. So any of this information could be something that goes onto your resume. So the key piece is capturing those experiences. So if we go back to that example resume that I showed earlier, the first year sophomore resume, there's several ways that we can do that. What we first want to do is organize the resume so that you can see, so that the employer can see what is the relevant experience, i.e. what is most related to what they're looking for. So on this resume, this person we can assume is probably just job searching for just possibly a job to kind of pay their bills and help pay for school, which we'll see that they've got work experience listed first and foremost. Because when you're looking for a part-time job, something that an employer is going to be most interested in is, have you worked before and what did you learn from that experience? So they have that section listed first and foremost. Then they go into volunteer experience and student organizations and on from there. You'll notice that there are 2 different ways to format your experiences. So for every experience you put on your resume, you want to make sure that you have the organization, the city and state where that organization is located, the dates that you were involved with the organization, and then your role or title with them. That can be displayed in a 2-line format, as you can see here, with then the bullet points below that detail that experience. Or you can put it in a 1-line format of identifying information with the role or title and then a comma, the organization's name, comma, city, comma, state abbreviation, and then some space in the dates. We do recommend putting dates on the right-hand side because it helps anchor that side of the page, and they're not that important, so it doesn't matter that they're over there on the right-hand side. So those are 2 ways that you can format that experience. As you get lower on the resume, so into your additional experience sections, which for this example would be volunteer experience, student organizations, you can either keep the same formatting, or if you need to, you can switch to a more condensed version, that 1 line of formatting at that point if needed. So you'll see in this example, earlier they had 2 lines of identifying details. So Chick-fil-A was on 1 line and then team member was on the 2nd line. When we get down to volunteer experience, they have all of the information on 1 line. And then still with bullet points, and when we get even further into the resume, student organizations, it's just a simple list to give them credit for the different things they're doing, but they didn't feel like they needed to explain those experiences as much. So details can be included for those additional experience sections, but they do not have to be. Okay, so writing your bullet points is one of the hardest parts about writing your resume. And here is the magic formula for how to write really powerful content that catches the employer's attention and makes them want to be interested in talking to you. So what a lot of people will do when they're drafting the resume is they'll put an action verb and they'll describe what they did, but then they forget to tell the rest of the story. So what you want to make sure you're doing is within your bullet point, have a 3-part structure. That action verb that's explaining the skill that you were using, then explaining what it was that you were doing, and then go on to tell us more about how did you do it, why was it significant, who did it impact, or what results you achieved. You probably can't answer all of those questions in one bullet point, but some combination of those pieces of information would be helpful so that you've got really powerful content on your resume, and that's going to make the reader more interested in you as well. Okay, so action verbs. We do have an action verb guide, which is linked to all of our resume guides. So if you find those under advising and then resumes, you can easily access this. And this really helps you to have a nice diverse list of verbs on your resume, which is more interesting. If you pick one verb and you just repeat it over and over and over again, it's so easy when somebody's skimming your resume quickly in that 7 to 10 seconds. It's very easy for them to just skip right over everything and move on to where the content's different again. So be careful about repeating the same verb over and over. You want to use action verbs that highlight your skills. So sometimes people will start a bullet point out with something like responsibilities included. Well, that's not a very active way of structuring your sentence. It's not that interesting either. So instead, start it out with simple present or simple past tense verb like managed, coordinated, design, or write. All of those are powerful verbs that through just that one word, you're conveying a skill set, and that's really a strong way to write your resume. An easy way to make sure that your verbs are in the right tense, because they can be present or they can be past tense. If you've completed the position, they should be in past tense, is imagine each bullet pointed sentence starts with I. It's funny that the resume is all about us, and yet we don't use pronouns like I or me. So imagining that each bullet point starts out with I, like I managed a team of 4 or I coordinated an intake process, that's going to be helpful to keep you on the right track with how you write your verbs. Okay, so let's take these different ideas, the formula for powerful content, the thinking about what an employer cares about, and let's apply it to a specific example. So being a camp counselor is sometimes a job that students have had, in high school or middle school, or even first year or 2 of college. So you could put that on the resume, and you could talk about like staying in tents and cooking over a campfire and kind of describing like what we would probably assume camp entails. Or you could think about, am I using this to apply for another camp counselor position? If I'm not, what am I applying to and what skills are they looking for? So like, let's say we're going to apply to something that's emphasizing communication skills. Maybe it has like sort of a marketing spin to it. So they're interested in persuasive skills, things like that, or being able to talk to different audiences. We can still use that camp counselor position. We just need to describe it in a different way from a different lens. So what we could do is go into details about, what did this person do? They created and taught weekly lessons to diverse groups of children and youth ages 8 to 18 during 3 sessions of a 5-week overnight camp. So we're getting details about the scope of this project. It was 3 sessions. It's a 5-week overnight camp for each of those sessions. So we know this was an extensive experience that someone had. Who are they working with? It's children and youth, ages 8 to 18. And then the skill sets they're using are sort of along the lines of communication and education, so creating and teaching. Another line would be, taught interactive content in a variety of subjects, including nutrition, hygiene, and how to respond to bullying. Here we're just getting more detail about that previous bullet point. So what were those subjects that were being taught? If someone were applying to like volunteer with a school, for example, and they were emphasizing the kinds of content that they were teaching in the camp setting, that could be really helpful because the school could see, well, that's so interesting. This person's already taught some of the same subjects we'd want them to teach as a volunteer. So you're showing that you're a good fit for that opportunity. Then here we're going into communicating with camp director and staff as well as parents. So those are the different kinds of people this person was interacting with. And then the methods that they were using: in-person communication, over the phone, and via email. So hopefully this is helping you see how, as you add more details, you can really start to the reader can really start to get a sense of what it is that you did, what the scope was of what you were involved in. And then finally, collaborated with counselors to monitor safety of campers and respond to any concerns or problems quickly and efficiently. So here we have responsibility, we have teamwork, we have problem solving, and these are all great skills that employers tend to look for. So that's just an example of how you can use these different tips I've been describing to write really powerful content on your resume. So once you've gotten your resume to a final draft, which we do recommend having somebody look at it and give you feedback, you can certainly, you're welcome to bring it into Career Services, and we'll give you some feedback on that so that you can have a really strong resume. Then what you're going to want to do is upload it to Handshake. So first things first, you want to prep your resume. So you've worked hard on that document. Make sure that you save it in a way that you can come back to it and make changes in the future. Because the irony of a successful resume is that the moment you land a new opportunity, your resume is now out of date. So you're going to want to make sure that you can come back to this draft and change it and edit it again in the future. So save that draft as a version that you can edit in the future. So a .doc or save it on Google Docs so that you can come back in and change it around. You don't usually want to save it strictly as a PDF because that's harder to edit later on. So you've got one version that you can come back to. Then take that same file and save it as a PDF version. If you're using Google Docs, that you can actually do that under File and then Download. It gives you the option to download it as a PDF. For Microsoft Word or Pages, it's going to be a Save As or a Print to PDF. Whatever way, the goal is to have a PDF version of your resume that you can send in to employers so that it preserves all of the formatting that you worked on with your document. Handshake, if you're not familiar, is our job and internship database. It's also where we have our federal work-study opportunities, all of our events, etc. So it's a lot of great information on Handshake, but one of the nice pieces is that you can actually store all of your career documents in Handshake so that you've got them with you as pretty much as long as you've got an internet connection. You've got them always, accessible via a phone or a laptop or whatever it might be. So when you log into Handshake, if you go over to the right-hand side and click on your little profile bubble with your initials, then it's going to show you the documents section. You can select that. Here we see I did not have any documents uploaded at this point. So I'm going to click Select from Computer so I can grab that file I've been working on. I'm going to name it something that's helpful, and this is where it's always good to put a date in, because if you start uploading multiple copies of your resume, which would be very normal to do if you're applying to different kinds of jobs, and then you don't use your resume for a while and then you go back to pull a copy of it again, it can be confusing as to which one is the most up to date. So we do recommend dating that file so that you can keep track of that. So I create a name, I include my date, I click Add Document. Handshake shows me a preview of what I've uploaded, so I can double check and make sure I picked the right file, which is another thing that's good to check. And then there we go. I've got my resume in the system. So now I can go back to that job that we started this whole process out with, where I was excited about the job. I wanted to go ahead and apply to it, and I found out I needed a resume. I click the apply button. I can attach the resume. Handshake's pretty clever, so it knows I just recently uploaded this particular resume, so it's going to ask me if that's the one I want to include. Or I can select Upload New, or I can pick, if I have multiple files already uploaded, I can pick one through the drop-down menu. And that's basically that. So if you want to learn more, definitely stay in touch with us. We have other videos on YouTube. You may also want to look into our cover letter guide, or the one about career fairs, since those are often related to the resume topic. You can also connect with us. We offer virtual appointments Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. As I mentioned earlier, our website is careers.vcu.edu. You can follow us on social at VCU Careers, and then our phone number here is here as well in case you need to call us with any questions or if you're having difficulty scheduling an appointment online. So I hope that was helpful. Definitely feel free to follow up with myself or any of the other career advisors. If you've got questions about your resume or you want to have somebody look at it and give you feedback on the content and the formatting, we're always happy to do that. So good luck with making your new resume.